Hello, this is Todd Shea with the La Crosse National Weather Service. If you're an event organizer or work with anyone that is planning an event, especially an outdoor event, it is essential that you be weather ready. The National Weather Service can provide weather decision support. When you think about an outdoor festival or fair, concert, you have a larger than normal population center that is outdoors and potentially vulnerable to any incoming severe weather. As an event organizer, it is essential that you have a plan in place for their public safety. With that in mind, a weather action plan is needed. The National Weather Service can provide decision support for that in the mission of public safety. Things to think about with action plans include what your potential weather hazards are, what your challenges are for your event or venue, who is monitoring the weather, how much lead time you might need, and how information will be communicated. This is certainly not a new principle. Back in the early 1960s, President Kennedy said the time to repair the roof is when the sun is shining. Certainly once the storm is hit, having everyone scramble is not an action plan, and that is not the time to plan. There have been a lot of examples through the years of festivals and fairs and events that have been impacted by significant weather. There has been loss of life, injuries, and in some cases, lots of chaos. This a case from 2011 is fairly famous, where you had a strong line of wind coming in with thunderstorms. The wind hits the stage at an awkward spot and buckles it. The collapse leads to numerous fatalities and injuries. But there are also smaller venues and smaller events where tents become flying or projectiles. Chaos ensues, and it becomes problematic for the event organizers and anyone that attends. There's even cases where non-severe weather, but simply lightning, can lead to problems. In these cases, strikes and fatalities. Sporting events are taking the threat for severe weather and even lightning more seriously. Used to be a time when football games would never be delayed or canceled, and even now they're becoming a little bit more highlighted when it comes to the threat of severe weather. We have lots of local examples where we have demonstrated decision support in a successful manner. Back in 1998, a regional tractor pull in Tomah, Wisconsin area had communicated with us their desire to be alerted before storms moved in, and we were able to give them several hours of advance notice so they could actually clear people out and everyone was moved to a place of safety. And then there are reoccurring events like we do in the Rochester, Minnesota area. For example, street festivals that occur during the warmer months on Thursdays. We make direct contact with people in the planning process, provide weather forecasts and monitor radar. And there is communication methods that are set up for before and during the event. The same thing goes with their Sunday night concert series called Down by the Riverside, where preparations are made ahead of time. Coordination is made before the event on when storms are expected and what viewers will do, what spectators will do if storms move into the area. They have an essentially a more difficult situation too, with the plot of land that concerts are held on is kind of surrounded by areas of water. So when it comes to planning, you need to understand the risk, which weather hazards could impact your area, which weather is typical for that time of year. And of course, in our area of the country, the summertime thunderstorm season brings a variety of hazards. Do you know the difference between watches, warnings, and advisories? Other things to think about include how will you monitor the weather? Do you know how to reach the National Weather Service? Is the National Weather Service even aware of your event? How much lead time do you need? Are there adequate shelters? And how is your message communicated? When most severe weather occurs is typically, of course, in the months of June, July. These graphics show the number of severe thunderstorm warnings from the 1980s up through 2018. This information was made available through the Iowa Environmental Mesonet. So when it comes to weather support, the National Weather Service should be a part of your action plan. We are a key partner that is available 24 hours a day and focuses on hazards that are essential to public safety. You should alert us of your event, the dates, the plans, and the contacts associated with it. Also, make sure to utilize available information sources and technology, and certainly watch for updates if there is a threat of thunderstorms. With that in mind, we urge you to work through your emergency management office, your emergency management director. The National Weather Service does provide government-to-government support, and we do have a web page that you can use to submit your event to us. We are able to provide more heads up if you are in our calendar for decision support. We can even develop a web page that you can use to monitor at your location. Plus, your event is added into our map system for highlight during warnings and statements. And in some cases, we can provide remote or on-site support and actually become embedded in your planning process. Here's an example of a decision support page that was made for a particular event, in this case the Toma Tractor Pull in 2017, that is centered on their venue and includes a wide variety of different graphics that can be used to easily track weather conditions. Of course, communication methods will need to be worked out in all scenarios. In a lot of cases, the standard telephone is the easiest and most successful, but we do have an office email account. We also have public service radios in some venues, and we can take part of any amateur radio club use that you involve in your planning. Now, in addition to planning, it is important to have situation awareness. It is important to kind of know what is lurking out there, especially when it comes to weather. So we always urge people to stay ahead of the weather and have a good source of weather information. It could be an app on your phone, it could be an internet location, it could be your favorite television or radio station. It could be us, the National Weather Service, but by all means take advantage of this technology. It is easier these days more than ever to watch for severe weather and keep an eye on radar. Now, our National Weather Service offices do have web pages. Ours is at weather.gov/lacrosse, and you can typically see if any severe weather is highlighted. The map typically will show watches and warnings that are in effect, and sometimes there are graphics that might include information like timing and which geographic areas are most likely to get struck by the severe weather. It's also important to realize, again, the difference between watches, warnings, and outlooks. Outlooks are issued furthest in advance, cover a larger area, and come in graphical and written forms. We'll get back to that in a second, but those can be used to know that there is a severe weather potential on any given day. As you get closer to severe weather, then we get what are called watches and warnings. Again, it's important you know the difference between the two. Watches are issued when there is potential severe weather in the region. So while severe weather may not be striking at that particular time, the risk for severe weather is higher. So certainly if you are placed into a watch, you'll want to keep a closer than normal eye on weather conditions if you have an event going on. Warnings, on the other hand, are issued for the local level, sometimes less than a county size, when severe weather has been reported or it looks imminent based on radar. That is certainly the action stage. When a warning is issued for your area, we would urge people to take shelter and get to a place of safety. Again, sometimes warnings are smaller than a county size and may be issued for part of the county that is not where your venue is located. But once again, there is this outer shell called an outlook, and these outlooks come in graphical and written forms. The graphical forms are in 5 different risk levels. They're basically areas of the lower 48 United States that are shaded in for these different risks, ranging from 1s and 2s, or marginal and slight, which is by far the most common risk level that we are in, to levels 3, 4, or 5, which are far more rare, but those are the days when the threat of more dangerous weather, for example, larger tornadoes, larger hail, or more destructive wind damage is possible. So again, 5 different risk levels. To show you some examples from 2017, here was a risk, an outlook, if you will, from March 6th, 2017, showing our area in a slight risk. And if I overlay the severe weather reports, which include damaging wind, large hail, and tornadoes, you can see how many different severe weather reports there were in that area. When it comes to May 17th, 2017, we had this enhanced risk over much of the area, which is a level 3 out of 5. And sure enough, if I overlay the severe weather, you can see all the reports that came in. And finally, July 19th, 2017, we had this enhanced risk. So the threat of severe weather was certainly expected on that day. And sure enough, if I overlay the severe weather, we had a mix of wind damage and tornadoes. Now that is the graphical versions of these outlooks, but these outlooks also come in a written form called a hazardous weather outlook. And this is something that our forecasts staff puts together each morning around 5 a.m. and sometimes updates during the day. It is local planning guidance out to 7 days, illustrating the expected hazards and any actions that we are expecting. On our webpage, right near where the map is, there is a link called Current Hazards. And if you mouse over it, you'll see the choice of outlooks. By clicking on that, you'll see this page that highlights our local hazardous weather outlook link, in addition to providing thumbnail graphics for the day 1, day 2, or tomorrow, and the third day out graphic for the risk of severe weather, in other words, the severe weather outlooks. Now let's talk about a few thunderstorm hazards. Certainly lightning is a risk for any outdoor event, and once again, the storm does not have to necessarily be warned on to have a lightning risk. When you look at these fatalities from 2017 and the activity involved in each of them, you'll see that they all involve outdoor type of activities. And so that is important to try to get people to shelter, especially when there is a lightning risk. Flooding, which seems like it's a year after year type of hazard, is something else that you'll want to consider for your venue. If it is a flood-prone area or in a threat of flash flooding, keeping close tabs on rising water levels. Of course, large hail can be a threat, not only to property, but can injure people if they are stuck out in a hailstorm. For example, this case was from a cross-country running event in Grinnell, Iowa, and you can see what large hail does as far as contusions and bruising if people are caught outdoors. Strong thunderstorm wind gusts, as alluded to earlier, can certainly break apart tents and cause havoc, but you also have to be aware of trees falling on vehicles and, of course, campsites. Those types of things all pose a threat from damaging winds. If you ever attend storm spotter classes, you'll also become accustomed to certain cloud formations. But for example, when it comes to thunderstorm wind gusts, one of the types of clouds that's common with strong winds is what we call shelf clouds. And shelf clouds typically look like this in a line or wedge shape that oftentimes signify a gust of wind, or in some cases damaging wind, headed towards your location. And of course, then there is the overall tornado threat. Tornado climatology peaks, the season peaks in May, June, and to a certain extent July around the region here, but then starts to drop off in the later summer. So again, if you have an event that is typically in May and June, you are in the peak of tornado season, and certainly something to keep a little bit closer tabs on. Keeping eyes on the forecast is important, but also how will you get notified? Do you have a notification system? Do you rely on sirens? Moving people indoors very quickly, it will be a key step in that action plan. So in summary, planning ahead of time and preparing, having an action plan is essential for public safety. You need to stay informed, use technology to keep up on weather threats and especially trends. Have a communication plan. How is your staff going to be communicated on your action plans if there is incoming severe weather? And also, how do you notify your guests that it is time to take shelter or they need to leave the premises because of incoming severe weather? Overall, we ask that you be proactive with safety. It is your responsibility, and realize once again that the National Weather Service is here as a mission directly support for weather decision making.